If someone had told me a year ago that one random day would completely change my life, I probably would have laughed. My life seemed almost perfect. I lived in a bright apartment on the ninth floor of a modern building overlooking the city. Every morning, the sunlight filled the kitchen while I made coffee, and every evening the streets below glowed with endless streams of headlights. Sometimes I stood by the window and watched people rushing somewhere, wondering where their lives were taking them. Most nights, though, I wasn't alone. Most nights Daniel was there. Daniel Carter was the kind of man people describe as too good to be true. Calm, confident, and steady, not loud, not arrogant. He never tried to impress anyone, and somehow that made him even more impressive. When he walked into a room, people trusted him immediately. I trusted him too. We met 3 years ago at a friend's birthday party. I hadn't even planned to go. I had just finished a long week at work and wanted to stay home, watch a movie, and forget about everything. But my best friend insisted. Just come for an hour, she said. You need to meet new people? So I went. The apartment was full of music and laughter, but I didn't know most of the people there. I grabbed a drink and stood near the kitchen, wondering how long I had to stay before leaving without being rude. That's when I noticed him. Daniel wasn't in the center of the room like most people. He was standing near the balcony door, talking quietly with someone. He laughed softly at something the other person said, and for a moment our eyes met across the room. There was something about that moment that felt strange, not dramatic, just familiar, like seeing someone you feel like you've known for years. A few minutes later, he walked over and introduced himself. We talked almost the entire night, about simple things, work, movies, travel, the strange way life sometimes pushes two strangers into the same moment. He had a calm way of listening that made you feel like every word mattered. By the time I left that night, I already knew something in my life had shifted. A week later, we went on our first date. 6 months later, we moved in together. A year after that, Daniel proposed. It wasn't a dramatic proposal. No crowd, no music, no big performance, just the two of us walking along the river at sunset. He stopped, pulled a small box from his jacket, and looked at me with nervous eyes. I still remember his hands shaking slightly. I remember laughing and crying at the same time when I said yes. We got married the following spring. It was a small wedding, only family and a few close friends. Everyone loved Daniel. My parents adored him. My friends kept telling me how lucky I was. And I believed them. Daniel had a great job at a logistics company. He worked long hours sometimes, but he always made time for me. He brought coffee to me in the mornings. Sometimes I'd find small notes he left on the fridge before leaving for work. Every once in a while, he would come home with flowers for no reason at all. And the strangest thing about Daniel was that he never gave me a reason to doubt him. Not once, which is why that day started like any other normal day. I was running late to meet my friend for lunch. The subway was overcrowded and the bus schedule was a disaster, so I decided to call a taxi. The car arrived in a few minutes. A gray sedan. I got into the back seat and gave the driver the address of the cafe. He nodded and started driving. For the first few minutes, we drove in silence. I answered a few messages on my phone and looked out the window at the passing buildings. Then I noticed the driver glancing at me in the rearview mirror. At first, I didn't think much of it. But a minute later, he looked again. This time longer. Like he was trying to recognize me. Eventually, I looked up and met his eyes in the mirror. He quickly looked back at the road. A moment later, he cleared his throat. Sorry, he said, but I think I know you. I gave a polite smile. I don't think so, he shook his head slowly. No, I'm pretty sure I do. He looked at me again in the mirror. Are you Daniel Carter's wife? The question made my chest tighten slightly. Yes, I said carefully. Why? The driver hesitated. For a moment it seemed like he was deciding whether to say something or stay quiet. Then he spoke. I've driven your husband a few times. That didn't sound unusual. Daniel used taxis a lot when he worked late. Oh, I said. Okay. The driver nodded slowly, but his expression didn't relax. He kept glancing at me in the mirror. Finally, he spoke again. I thought you knew. My stomach tightened. Knew what? He hesitated again. Then he said something that made the world around me go completely still. He often takes my taxi to visit another woman. For a moment, I wasn't sure I had heard him correctly. What? The driver sighed quietly. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. My hands suddenly felt cold. Wait, I said. What exactly are you talking about? He glanced at me again. I recognized you because your husband once showed me a photo of you. He said you were his wife. My heart was beating faster now, and the driver looked uncomfortable. I just assumed you knew about the other woman. The words felt unreal, like they didn't belong in my life. What other woman? I asked quietly. There's a place he goes to, the driver said. An old apartment building near Maple Park. I've taken him there many times. Many times, the phrase echoed in my head. I tried to stay calm. Maybe the driver was mistaken. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe there was some explanation. What does she look like? I asked slowly. Dark hair, he said. Early 30s maybe. He visits her a few times a week. A few times a week. Suddenly my mind started replaying every moment of the past year. Late meetings, unexpected work trips. Evenings when Daniel said he had to stay at the office. Had I missed something? Had there been signs I ignored? I couldn't remember a single moment when he seemed dishonest. But the driver sounded certain. The car stopped at a red light. My hands were trembling slightly in my lap. One thought kept repeating in my mind. What if my entire life was a lie? I swallowed and forced myself to speak. Do you know the exact address? The driver nodded. Yes, I stared at the passing streetlights outside the window. Part of me wanted to pretend I had never heard any of this. I could go to lunch, go home, act like nothing had happened, but another part of me needed the truth, no matter what it was. Take me there, I said. The driver looked surprised. Are you sure? My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it. Yes. He turned the car onto another street and drove toward the older part of the city. The buildings outside the window slowly changed. Modern glass towers turned into narrow streets and aging apartment blocks. Neither of us spoke during the rest of the drive. My thoughts were loud enough. Every memory with Daniel replayed in my mind. Our wedding, our trips together, the quiet evenings on our balcony. Had any of it been real? Or had I simply been blind? After about 20 minutes, the car slowed down and stopped in front of an old building. The paint on the walls was fading. The courtyard was narrow and quiet. The driver pointed toward one of the entrances. Third entrance, he said quietly. Second floor. My throat felt tight. I paid for the ride and stepped out of the car. The air outside felt colder than before. For a moment, I just stood there staring at the building. If I walked away now, my life might stay exactly the same. But if I walked inside, everything could fall apart. Still, I knew one thing. Doubt is like a crack in glass. Once it appears, it never disappears. So I walked toward the entrance. The stairwell inside was dimly lit. Each step echoed softly as I climbed. Second floor, apartment 27. I stood in front of the door trying to steady my breathing. My heart was racing. I raised my hand and knocked. A few seconds passed, then the door opened. A woman stood in the doorway, dark hair, tired eyes. She looked at me with confusion. Yes. My voice almost failed me. Does Daniel Carter live here? She froze. For a moment her expression changed in a way I couldn't understand. He visits, she said slowly. But he's not here right now. My chest tightened. I'm his wife. The woman stared at me in complete shock. His wife? She looked confused, almost frightened. Then she said something I never expected to hear. He told me no one knew about me. The woman's words hung in the air between us. For a moment, neither of us moved. She kept staring at me like she was trying to understand something impossible, and I felt the same confusion growing inside my chest. He told me no one knew about me? Those words echoed in my mind. My first instinct was anger, the kind that makes your hands shake and your thoughts race faster than you can control them. So it was true. Daniel had been coming here. To this woman, behind my back, I felt the floor beneath my feet suddenly seem less stable. Who are you? I asked quietly. The woman hesitated. Her eyes moved over my face carefully as if she was searching for something in my expression. My name is Emily, she finally said. Emily, the name felt unfamiliar. Daniel had never mentioned anyone named Emily before, not a coworker, not a friend, no one. And you know Daniel? I asked. Her answer came slowly. Yes, just one word, but there was something strange in the way she said it, not nervous, not defensive, just careful, as if every word had to be chosen correctly. I felt my heart beating faster again. How do you know him? I asked. Emily looked past me for a moment, toward the dim stairwell, then back at my face. She looked exhausted, not in the way people look after a long day. It was something deeper. the kind of tiredness that stays in someone's eyes for years. Maybe you should come inside, she said quietly. For a second, I wasn't sure if I wanted to. Part of me wanted to walk away, go home, and confront Daniel directly. But another part of me needed answers now, right now, so I stepped inside. The apartment was small, very small. The living room had an old couch, a coffee table with a stack of books, and a small lamp that gave the room a warm but dim light. There were no expensive decorations, no luxury. Nothing about this place looked like the secret life of someone having an affair. If anything, it looked lonely. Emily closed the door behind me. "Do you want some tea?" she asked. I shook my head. "No. I just want the truth." She nodded slowly. Then she sat down on the couch and gestured for me to sit across from her. For a moment we just looked at each other, two strangers connected by one man. "Daniel told me he was married," Emily said. The words hit me like a cold wave. "He did," she nodded. "Yes." My confusion deepened. "Then why did you say he told you no one knew about you?" Emily took a slow breath. Her fingers tightened slightly around each other. "Because he said his wife didn't know I existed." I felt a strange pressure in my chest. "What exactly are you to him?" I asked. The question came out sharper than I intended. Emily looked down at the floor. For several seconds she didn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. "He asked me not to tell anyone." A heavy silence filled the room. My patience was breaking. "Tell anyone what?" Emily lifted her eyes to meet mine, and when she spoke, the answer shattered every assumption I had made. "I'm his sister." The words didn't make sense at first. They floated in the air between us, disconnected from reality. "His sister?" Emily nodded slowly. "Yes." My mind struggled to catch up. Daniel had told me about his parents, about growing up in a small town, about moving to the city after college. But he had never once mentioned having a sister, not once. "That's impossible," I said. Emily didn't argue. She simply stood up and walked toward a small shelf in the corner of the room. After a moment, she returned with a framed photograph. She handed it to me. The photo was old, maybe 20 years old. Two children stood in a backyard, a boy around 10 years old and a little girl who looked maybe 6. They were both smiling at the camera. Even though the boy was younger, I recognized him immediately. It was Daniel. I felt my breath catch. "That's him," I whispered. Emily nodded. "And that's me." My hands tightened slightly around the frame. "Why would he hide you?" Emily sat down again. For a moment she stared at the photograph in my hands. "Because he's been hiding me for almost 15 years. The sentence felt heavy. "What do you mean?" Emily leaned back slightly, as if preparing herself to explain something painful. "When we were kids, our family fell apart," she said quietly. "Our father left, our mother started drinking. Things got bad." I listened without speaking. "Daniel was always the one protecting me," she continued. "He tried to keep everything together even though he was just a teenager." Her eyes moved slowly across the room. "Then one night our mother disappeared for 3 days. When she finally came back, she wasn't alone." Her voice tightened slightly. "She brought people into the house, dangerous people." I felt a cold feeling spreading through my chest. "Daniel knew we couldn't stay there anymore," Emily said, "so he left." The words came slowly, carefully. "He was 18, I was 14. I stared at her. "He left you there?" Emily shook her head. "No," her eyes softened slightly. "He promised he would come back for me when he could give me a better life." My throat tightened. "But he didn't." Emily gave a sad smile. "Not the way he planned." She looked down at her hands. 2 months after he left, something happened at the house." Her voice grew quieter. "The police came. There was a fight between some of the people our mother was involved with." I felt my stomach drop. "I got caught in the middle of it." The room felt colder. "What happened to you?" I asked gently. Emily looked up at me. "I was injured," she said. "Pretty badly." Her voice stayed calm, but I could see the pain behind her eyes. "I spent months in the hospital, and when I got out, things were different." She paused for a moment. "The injury caused long-term problems. I couldn't work normally anymore. I needed constant treatment." The pieces slowly began forming in my mind. "Daniel found out," she continued. "He came back immediately." My chest tightened again. "He blamed himself." Emily looked toward the window. "He said if he had taken me with him earlier, none of it would have happened." A deep silence filled the room. "So he started helping you," I said. Emily nodded. Yes. She gestured around the small apartment. He pays for everything. The rent, my treatment, my food. The weight of everything I had believed earlier pressed heavily on my chest. And you kept it a secret? I asked. Emily nodded again. It was his decision. Why? She hesitated. Because he didn't want anyone to see me like this. I frowned slightly. Like what? Emily gave a tired smile. I have good days and bad days. Some days I can barely leave the apartment. Her voice stayed calm. Daniel built a new life, a successful career, a future. She looked at me carefully. He didn't want people asking questions about the sister he abandoned years ago. My chest tightened painfully. He told me he finally had something good in his life, Emily continued softly. He said he met someone who made him happy. Her eyes stayed on mine. That someone was you. I felt a deep wave of guilt wash over me. All the anger I had felt in the taxi suddenly seemed small and misplaced. He visits me a few times every week, Emily said. Sometimes just for an hour, sometimes longer, but he always makes sure I'm okay. She paused. He's been doing that for 14 years. 14 years without telling anyone. I looked around the small apartment again. The old furniture, the quiet loneliness of the room, and suddenly everything made sense. The late nights, the mysterious trips, the secrecy, it had never been about another woman. It had always been about protecting someone he loved. Why didn't he tell me? I whispered. Emily didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked a question. Does Daniel trust people easily? I thought about it. About the quiet, careful way he moved through the world, about how rarely he spoke about his past. No, I admitted. Emily nodded. He was afraid. Afraid of what? That you would see this part of his life and leave. The words hit me harder than anything else that night. Leave because of this, because he was taking care of his sister? A strange mix of sadness and admiration filled my chest. I stood up slowly. I need to talk to him, I said. Emily nodded. He should be here soon. My heart skipped a beat. Soon. He usually comes around this time. The room suddenly felt tense. Every second seemed louder, and then we heard it. Footsteps in the hallway, slow, familiar, a key sliding into the lock. The door opened. Daniel stepped inside. For a moment he didn't see me, he was looking at Emily. Hey, he said gently. How are you feeling today? Then his eyes moved across the room, and he froze. The color drained from his face. Anna, his voice was barely more than a whisper. Shock, fear, guilt, all of it crossed his face in a single moment. For a few seconds none of us spoke, then he looked at Emily. You told her? Emily shook her head softly. No, Daniel looked back at me. Confusion filled his eyes. Then how? The taxi driver, I said quietly. Understanding spread slowly across his face. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly overwhelmed. I was going to tell you one day, he said. One day, I repeated. My voice wasn't angry anymore, just tired. Daniel looked down at the floor. I didn't know how. The silence between us felt heavy, then I stepped closer. Daniel, I said softly. He looked up. Fear was still there. The fear of losing everything. I took another step. You should have trusted me? His voice cracked slightly. I was afraid you'd see this part of my life and think I was broken. I shook my head slowly. Instead of answering, I turned toward Emily, then back to him. You didn't hide a shameful secret, I said quietly. You were protecting your family. Daniel's eyes filled with emotion he was clearly trying to control. I thought if you knew, it would be too much. I took his hand. His fingers were trembling. Daniel, I said gently, this doesn't make me love you less. His eyes searched my face carefully. If anything, I squeezed his hand slightly. It makes me respect you more. For the first time since he walked into the room, the tension in his shoulders softened. The truth had almost destroyed everything. But in the end, it revealed something even stronger than the perfect life I thought I had. It revealed the quiet strength of the man I married, and the family he had been protecting all along.